Hare Krishna, welcome to the Sunday Feast class for ISKCON Portland. Today is 25th of April, 2021. We are still in the middle of the COVID pandemic, unfortunately, and I pray for everyone's well-being and everyone's safety. Before we discuss today's topic, which is going to be related to COVID, let us recite the Mangalacharan prayers and get started. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, today, as I said, we are still in the middle of this horrible pandemic, and unfortunately, there are so many people that are suffering, especially in some parts of the world, like in India right now, the situation is extremely bad. And so many people are suffering. Many are unfortunately dying. Many devotees are suffering. Relatives and friends of devotees are suffering as well. So let us take a moment and pray for the well-being, safety, and health of all the devotees and their friends and all the living entities so that they can continue their spiritual journey forward. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So today's topic I chose to be titled as COVID vaccination, whether to take it or not to take it. So there is a lot of discussion going around, especially among the devotees of the Lord, within ISKCON especially, whether to take COVID vaccination. And there are so many arguments on either side. And I thought I've been reading about it a little bit myself, and I've been thinking about it, and I made some notes over a few days, and I thought that might be a good thing to share with all of you. Now, I understand this is a potentially controversial topic. So I just want to say these are my personal views, even though we are on the official ISKCON Portland channel. I just want to say this has no bearing on ISKCON Portland, and these are simply my own views. And all I request is for you to listen with an open mind and listen to all sides of the arguments. And then after evaluating all the considerations, you need to make your own decisions. I will just share with you what I have found and what I have learned from material side, as well as from spiritual side, as well as from spiritual leaders, some of my spiritual mentors, etc. And the conclusions that at least I have come to, and my conclusion is straightforward, at least the final conclusion is, yes, I have taken the vaccine. I have already taken it. I have got both shots, and for better or worse, it's already inside my body. So that's at least my personal conclusion. So I wanted to start with a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which is very, very applicable in this situation. It's 9.16. Maybe I can share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, bro, we can see the screen.
Okay, great. So I will recite the verse once, and then we'll read the translation and purport. Aham kratur aham yagyaha swadhadham aham ausadham mantro aham evajyam aham agnir aham hutam. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse number 16. The translation is, but it is I who am the ritual. I, the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. Purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Vedic sacrifice known as Jyotishtoma is also Krishna. And he is also the Mahayagya mentioned in the Smriti. The oblations offered to the Pitraloka, or the sacrifice performed to please the Pitraloka, considered as a kind of drug in the form of clarified butter, is also Krishna. The mantras chanted in this connection are also Krishna, and many other commodities made with milk products for offering in the sacrifices are also Krishna. The fire is also Krishna, because fire is one of the 5 material elements and is therefore claimed as the separated energy of Krishna. In other words, the Vedic sacrifices recommended in the Karmakanda division of the Vedas are in total also Krishna. Or in other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. So, this last line is what we want to focus on. In other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all the sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. And I will focus on that throughout the discussion. So, the important word that I wanted to focus here is Ausadham. Aham Ausadham, Krishna says, and we'll need to also understand Aushadha. You all know Aushadha means medicine or healing herb is how Srila Prabhupada is translated. Aushadha is basically medicine. You all know that. And the context in which this whole verse is being spoken, 9.16, within the overall 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, for all of you who are scholars of Bhagavad Gita, you will understand that 9th chapter is the most confidential knowledge. That's the title of the chapter. As you can see here, chapter 9 says the most confidential knowledge. It's known as Rajvidya Rajaguhyam. So this knowledge, transcendental knowledge, Lord Krishna is imparting in the Bhagavad Gita. He's reaching the peak in the 9th chapter. And the context of this verse is that the whole world, the entire material creation emanates from Krishna himself. Everything is Krishna. There is nothing that is separate from Krishna. In one of the verses, Lord Krishna says, Maya dhakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam. So the whole Maya adhyakshena prakritihi. So this whole prakriti, this whole nature, material nature, the material creation is working under Maya adhyakshena. Adhyaksha, as you know, adhyaksha means director or some, senior superintendent or boss. And Krishna is saying pretty much Maya adhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam. That this whole material nature, the moving and the non-moving, chara and achara, moving and the non-moving are all which comprise this whole material nature is working under my superintendence or my direction. Maya adhyakshena. So I am the director. I am controlling this whole material world. So even the medicine, and then Lord Krishna says, whatever you are doing, basically, you should do that as an offering to Krishna. This whole chapter, more or less, is building up to one of the very important verses of the Bhagavad Gita, which is 9.27, which says, Yad karoshi, yad ashnashi, yad juhoshi, dadasi, yad tapasyasi kaunteya, tad kurushva mad arpanam. So whatever you are doing, or all you need to do is to dovetail that to please Krishna, to offer it to Krishna. And as long as we are doing whatever we are doing, but with the consciousness that my goal is to please Lord Krishna, to develop a loving relationship with Krishna, then that becomes Krishna conscious activity. So this is the sort of the essence of the 9th chapter. And within that context, Lord Krishna is saying, I am the healing medicine. I am Ausadham. Ausadham Aham. That's what he said. So in a certain sense, the vaccine for COVID, for example, is a medicine. Now, whether it cures, so it's not technically a medicine because medicine cures, but a vaccine prevents the disease in the first place. So again, we won't go into that technicality, whether it's a curative medication or a preventive medication, but it's a medicine. And whether to take it or not is becoming a big discussion these days. So I just wanted to share my thoughts about how should devotees think about it. Now, this discussion, I know this video is going to get put up on YouTube and Facebook and whatnot. So this is not something that is geared towards just somebody who is not familiar with the teachings of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. A prerequisite for this is to understand what is the key message of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And then it will be very easy to understand what I'm going to say. So the question is, whether one should take the vaccine or whether one should not take the vaccine. So let's see what are the arguments on either side of the discussion. So we will consider material arguments and we will consider spiritual arguments. So from the material arguments for taking the vaccine, they are very clear. I don't need to explain you why at a material level, what are the arguments for taking the vaccine. You can go listen to Dr. Fauci, you can go listen to all the popular news channels, they will tell you why everybody should get vaccinated. So this class is not about repeating what Dr. Fauci keeps saying in the news, or all the CDC and World Health Organization and everybody. So those arguments are clear, if you get vaccinated, you will not get the disease. And then there are some questionable benefits, maybe whether you will be a carrier or not, and how long the vaccine will last. And, and one of the benefits that's being touted for the vaccine is if enough people get it, then the virus won't have a host to live on. One of the very important statements I heard from Fauci was, he said, one of the key fundamentals of virology, the study of viruses, is that if a virus can't mutate, then it can't circulate. So, and a virus needs a host for mutation, for living. And so if you're vaccinated, you won't give a chance for the virus to be a host in your to live inside your body. You won't be a host for the virus, and therefore it can't mutate. And if it can't mutate, then it can't convert itself into more deadly forms. Again, I'm no doctor, but that's what I heard. So these are the benefits, and maybe there is another long list of benefits of taking the vaccine. You can go find that out. Now, from the material standpoint, what are the points against taking the vaccine that I have heard from various people who are, you may call them anti-vaccine people, whatever, there's a whole group of people who are anti-vaccine. And those theories are in multiple domains. One of the domains is some kind of conspiracy. I've heard very wacky points like, oh, the government is trying to insert a microchip in your body, or this vaccine will cause long-term problems, which will further boost the profits of the medical industry. It will cause heart problems and all kinds of other problems. Now, that may be true. Every material solution absolutely has more material problems. But the question is whether it has been designed with that malicious intent in mind, that something has been inserted into the vaccine design itself, which will necessarily cause future problems so that medical profits can increase. Who knows? So I'm just listing out what I have heard, some sort of conspiracy theories. So these are conspiracy theories on one side. We won't deal with those. So that's on one side. We'll just leave that aside. Of course, in Kali Yuga, anything is possible. This is Kali Yuga. People are mostly of a demoniac mentality, and they can do anything to increase their profits, to harm, even at the cost of harming others. That is certainly very prevalent. So I'm not rejecting or approving any of those conspiracy theories. That's one side of the argument. Now, there are some more non-conspiracy and more valid material arguments at a material level. And those are of the following nature. One of the arguments is that, why bother? Why bother taking the vaccine? Because this is not such a deadly disease. It only kills 0.5% of the people who get the virus. So not everybody may get the virus. Among those who get it, maybe 0.5 or 1% people may die. And so why bother? It's a very low probability. Then there are other arguments like, even after taking the vaccine, you are required to wear mask, social distancing, because other people may be, because you may be a potential carrier yourself. And even though you may not get sick, if you're a carrier and if you're close to someone else who has not taken the vaccine, you may harm him or her by passing on the virus to that person. So unless both of you are vaccinated, you shouldn't, remove social distancing measures or something like that in that domain. And also hey, who knows how long the vaccine will last, the effect. Maybe you need to take it every year. Maybe that's a possibility. Or so many other concerns or points may be there about like, why bother? So I put all these in one category as to why bother taking it. Okay, that's probably, there is some validity in those arguments. I don't deny that. So that's something for you to consider personally. I mean, of course, you can do all the math you want that, hey, you know, if everybody in the world starts thinking that it's only 0.5% death rate, it's still a very big number. There are 7 billion plus people on the planet. We can do the math. Even if it's like 0.5%, how much is that? 7 billion. So that comes to 70 million is 1%. 35 million people. That's the number of people approximately. Again, I'm trying to remember my history, that got killed in the Second World War. So that's a lot of people. So anyway, you can do all kind of math, and that's one side of the argument. So you can decide as to whether you want to bother or not with taking the vaccine. And then there is the aspect of social responsibility that you are, if you, even though, you know, you may or may not choose to take the vaccine, if you do take it, you are a member of the society that is trying to eradicate or, you know, some sort of control the virus by not giving it enough hosts to pass on and mutate, because mutation is one of the biggest worries for the virus. And as we see in India right now, all these rising cases are mostly due to the mutant, the new mutant or some strain of the virus, as far as I understand. So you can be, you know, that those are arguments at the material level. Now, there are some arguments which are a little bit into the spiritual side of not taking the virus. So we talked about arguments that are why you should take the vaccine at the material level. Just I'm summarizing in the middle. And by the way, those who joined us late, the topic of the class is COVID vaccine, whether to take it or not, because this is a sort of a topic going around in the society, and especially among devotee circles. So I thought I did some research, I read up a little bit, and I am presenting my own thoughts. And these are purely my personal thoughts for your potential consideration. So we talked about why material reasons to take the vaccine, material reasons potentially to not take the vaccine. Now going on to the spiritual side, some of the reasons to not take the vaccine that I have heard are to do with the law of karma. And one of the points being made is that some countries are forcing you to take the vaccine belonging to their country or that their country has approved before they will let you into their country, before they will give you a visa to come into their country. That's one of the arguments. Now, again, I'm not a political expert by any means. I'm not an expert on international policy, but I'm just applying some common sense and presenting my own thoughts to you. I'll say this over and over again, because this could be a controversial topic. So please take it, listen to it with an open mind and do your own evaluation with your own considerations and come up with your own decision. So as far as that is the point, that some countries will not let you into their country without taking a vaccine that they have manufactured or they have approved. So that's one of the points. And it seems a little unfair that why should I take the vaccine that you have approved? I have taken a vaccine. Why does it need to be a vaccine that you have approved? Now, this is I feel a little hard to debate. And it really goes down to what's the motivation behind that country demanding why you should take a vaccine that they have approved. So one reason, obviously, that could be is that they want to profit from selling or forcing you to buy a vaccine, or forcing another country to buy a vaccine that this other country is manufacturing. So before they will let these people into their country. If that is the motivation, then obviously that is not a good motivation, because the goal is material profits at the cost of exploiting someone else. And it's from our Shastra and from all that we understand that for your own material profit, if you want to harm someone else, then that's not a good thing. However, so now I haven't seen any nation claim that that's the reason, that I want to profit at your cost. And I will use this, your desire to come into my country so that I can sell you a vaccine. Nobody will say that publicly. Maybe that's the motivation. And again, I said, this is Kali Yuga. Anything is possible. Political leaders are no sacred or holy cows. Most often, they are the most corrupt people in general. So anything can happen. But at least the other side of the argument could be that they are trying to meet certain safety standards according to their level, according to their evaluation. Just like, I have traveled many times between India and the United States, and usually with a stopover in Europe. When I go to India and I take a stopover in Europe, there is no additional security check in Europe. They just let you on the flight to India, because probably India trusts that whatever security check had been done at the American airport was enough. But when you're coming the other way around from India, and you are about to take a US bound flight from the stopover in Europe, from Amsterdam or Frankfurt or wherever, there is a US based security check. You have to go through an additional security check to take a US bound flight. And that's because the United States maybe does not trust the security level of India that the incoming flight was on from India to Europe. And they want to enforce their standard of security and safety. So if that is the motivation, at least it makes common sense. So if some country says that you must take a vaccine that I have approved, it may not be manufactured by my country, I may not be profiting from it, but from a safety standard, if I have approved it, and that's what you need to have taken, then you can come in. I feel it's, I just personally feel it's a legitimate request. But again, who knows what's the motivation, what's behind the scenes, what the politicians and policymakers are thinking. It all really depends on that. We will never be able to know what goes on behind the scenes. So again, I'm just presenting the arguments that I thought, and you can make your own decisions. Another point that I have heard is that, which is now, this is an increasing order of spiritual sort of offense or karma, sinful action. So one was, trying to sell you a vaccine. The second argument I have heard often is that some of the richer nations are exploiting the poorer nations. And it's not exactly clear how this applies to the vaccine situation, but some scenarios, like maybe some of the raw materials for the vaccine are being taken from the poor nations, or maybe some human testing is happening on the poor nations, on the people in the poor nations, before the more affluent nations allow the vaccine to be administered to their people. That sounds very serious, that you're using some of the poorer nations' people as for testing or for experimentation and potentially harming. Now, I have not come across any proof of that, but again, this is in the domain of conspiracy versus, possibility and all. But what exactly is the exploitation of the poorer nations? Or maybe the vaccine supplies are not being distributed equally to poor nations and rich nations. The rich nations are hogging up all the vaccine supplies, and a human life is a human life, whether it's in Africa or in the United States. So whether, the vaccine should be equally distributed based on population density, then all the vaccines should be going to India, China, Bangladesh, Indonesia. United States would come, pretty low in the list because our population density is not as high. So, but yeah, we have a big wallet. So a large pool of vaccines is coming to the United States. Is that fair? Is that unfair? It does sound unfair. But my question is, and again, these are just points for thought. Is that true only with vaccines? Is that not true with anything else? There are so many things that make up our life and a good livelihood. Look at oil resources, it's coming, or look at energy resources. Look at all the food, and there's a lot of shortage of food in the world. There's no shortage of food in the United States because it has a bigger wallet. So that argument applies. Yes, that's a very valid argument, but in my limited common sense, it applies not just to the vaccine. Then it should be applied everywhere. You should really be questioning, should I be consuming all the affluent food that I get? Certainly there are people going hungry in Africa, Bangladesh, Pakistan, maybe India, all the poorer nations. So that's something to consider as well, that this point does not seem to be specific just to the vaccine. Yes, testing aspect seems specific to vaccine, but shortage of vaccine is true for every natural resource or every resource, natural or man-made. Then comes the final point that I wanted to bring up on the spiritual side, is that the vaccine contains something called embryonic kidney cells, or it has been used, or embryonic kidney cells have been used to manufacture the vaccine or something like that. Again, I'm no expert in this, but I did some reading up, and it appears that now, of course, as Vaishnavas or as aspiring Vaishnavas, we absolutely want to stay away from anything that was produced by taking the life of another living entity in the space. I mean, in the animal kingdom, of course, we eat plants, and plants are living as well, but we offer the plants to Krishna, whatever food items we prepare, and then eat. Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati, 9.26. So Patram is leaf, Pushpam is flower, Patram Pushpam Phalam is fruit, and Toyam water. So 3 out of those 4 items are plant-based, Patram, Pushpam, and Phalam. So Krishna says, please offer to me, and then you can have. So yes, we absolutely offer plant-based or vegetarian items. And of course, milk is considered vegetarian as well, because there is no killing of a living entity or an animal living entity that is involved in this process. So if a killing of a living entity, a human entity, occurred in this production of the vaccine, that would be really, personally for me, it would be like crossing a line. Now, at least in my reading, what I understood is that tests were done on some cells from human kidneys, because when you apply the vaccine or whatever the vaccine molecules, you need to test it at a cellular level and then expand it to bigger and bigger entities, culminating it in the human itself, a living human being. So if some cells are extracted from a body and some testing is done on those cells as to the effect of the molecule, the virus or the vaccine molecule on the cells, but the living entity is not harmed, that's fine. I mean, sometimes when I have my blood tests done, they ask me, would you like your blood to be used for some research purposes? I have checked. Yes, you can use it for research if you want, and they ensure some privacy that it will not be disclosed as to the name of the patient, as to the blood sample will not be disclosed. And I have said, yes, go ahead, and as long as I was not harmed, blood was drawn for a different reason, and they are going to use that for research work. How much ever I know, it seems to be the similar case. I may be wrong, but again, who knows? And they may be doing things behind the scenes that they are not telling us. Certainly that may be possible as well. So, and the other question is that what about all the other vaccines that we give to our children? Have they involved as well anything? I don't know. So certainly it doesn't mean that if we are okay there, we can be okay here. That's not what I'm saying. We should examine every single situation very carefully. Even if we have ignored to examine other situations, if a situation comes in front of us, we should examine it. And COVID is that situation. But having this knowledge about COVID, let's say if it does have a karmic impact involved, because it involved the harming of other human beings or other animals, then that should lead us to think and investigate other vaccines, what's going on over there, and all the other medical systems. So that brings me to the other point that, if one is, again, there's a whole spectrum of devotees. And I said this discussion is meant for devotee circles, mainly for those who have some understanding of what Lord Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, that there are various, devotees in various, at various levels. And some devotees are very staunch, very strict, and they will not even come close to any allopathic or Western medication for this fear that they will get entangled in the karmic reaction, because those medications are potentially having karmic reaction involved. And I totally respect their opinion. But I have come across some devotees who are very anti-COVID vaccine, but they have not given enough thought to everything else in the Western medicine. And there I see a little bit of a contradiction in their stand. So all I'm trying to say is one must be very clear internally what their overall standard is that they're trying to maintain, and not be fanatic without good reason against one particular thing and not against something else. So there are some devotees who are very strict, who lead a very, very strict lifestyle, perfectly according to Vaishnava principles. They don't even, at a very extreme level, they don't even buy their grocery from a grocery store like Costco or Target or Fred Meyer or Walmart, because they don't want to support a business which sells all kinds of animal products like meat and beef and all that. Now, I do buy my grocery at Costco or Fred Meyer. I have not been able to set my personal standard to that level. But there are some devotees who grow their own food in their own farm, and that's all they eat. That's a very, very high standard. They maintain some cows, who they take very good care of those cows. They have a goshala. They milk the cows, just like Lord Krishna used to milk the cows in Vrindavan, and drink the milk, but take very good care of the cows, not exploit the calves. The calves would get enough milk for themselves. They would not deprive the calves of the milk either. So that's one standard to live. Now, another standard is, some devotees say, I won't eat in a restaurant that is going to cook non-vegetarian stuff. I can eat at a vegan restaurant or a vegetarian restaurant. That can be another standard. There can be multiple standards of devotees, is what I'm saying. And you can decide, one should decide based on what their standard is. But my point is applying that standard a little consistently, and not one. It doesn't make sense, common sense to me at least, to apply a different standard for one particular vaccine or medicine and not for others. That's just something to think about. So I was going to say something else there, but I forgot. Okay, so I have 15 minutes left. So what's the main point? So the main point is that, now I'll give a small example as to setting the standard, where devotees set a standard. Now, I'll say this one thing, that just because we are living in the material world, we may be, we are already afflicted, or we are already contaminated by a whole lot of karmic reaction that we may not even be aware of. Now, I'll make you aware of one particular karmic reaction that is going to be extremely hard to escape. And unless you are like living in a farm and growing your own food and, chop your own wood, light your own fire, maintain your own cows, build your own little hut from raw materials, it's going to be very hard to escape the karmic reactions. Let me share my screen. If you go to YouTube, so this is how you might see YouTube. I have opened it. Can you see my screen? In a, this is how you might see it without signing in. So I'm not signed in incognito mode. And if you go to the search window of YouTube and type story of stuff, and the first video or the second video that comes in here, which has 7.2 million views 12 years ago, it's a beautiful video that I would urge you to watch. Oh, we have to go through this ad. Okay, sorry. And if you see this particular video, I'll just leave it, pause it here, story of stuff. I urge you to watch this 21 minute video. Can you still hear me, or did the computer sound take over?
We can hear you.
All right. So you will see here, this is just one person's analysis on how the material world is kind of, we are engaged in many, many unethical activities in this material world. And all the stuff that we consume today in our day-to-day life has some exploitation of someone involved somewhere down the line. And it's extremely hard to avoid that. So how do we avoid it? How do we avoid this kind of karmic reaction? And that's what brings us to Srila Prabhupada's main message, which is that one should not worry about trying to avoid karmic reaction at our personal level to the last degree. That is not the goal. That is not the teaching of Bhakti Yoga of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, which is the most sacred text that we all put our faith in. Lord Krishna's message is very clear. So let me share again from the Bhagavad Gita. This is going to be from chapter 18, which we are, by the way, going through in our Bhagavad Gita classes these days. Today, by the way, is the last class of the session. So here, from 45 to 48, very, very important instructions by Lord Krishna, where he says that one should not try to be someone who he is not. Don't try to artificially change yourself or pretend to be someone else. Just do your duty. That's what he says in these 45 to 48, 4 verses. And he says that every endeavor is covered by some fault. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his own nature, even if such work has some faults. But this does not mean keep doing faulty work. That's not the meaning. One should continue reading the Bhagavad. That's why the Bhagavad Gita cannot be taken out of context. Just a few verses later, he says from 56 to 58 and a half of this verse. The other half is the consequences of not doing your duty. We won't focus on that today. You can come to the Bhagavad Gita classes if you want a full description. But here Lord Krishna says, though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee under my protection reaches the eternal imperishable abode of mine by my grace. Mat prasadat, he says, by my prasad. Prasad is the mercy. Mat prasadat avapnoti. So when we surrender to Krishna, when we are Krishna conscious and we do our own duty in that mood, and even if that duty involves some fault, Krishna says, as long as your intent is to develop a loving relationship with me, I will protect you. I will make sure by my grace, I will make sure that you do not get entangled in the karmic reactions. He says in the next verse, in all activities, just depend on me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be always conscious of me. This is very similar to yad karoshi yad ashnashi yad juhoshi dadasi yad tapasyasi konteya tad kurushva madarpanam, the one that we saw a few minutes back. So he says that if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. And this conditioned life, these are the obstacles to do this or to do that. A very good example from Srila Prabhupada's pastimes that I was hearing in one of the classes was that one time somewhere in Australia, probably Perth, which is on the western side of Australia, very, very sort of removed from the rest of the country, a very isolated region, there is a temple, and this is from Srila Prabhupada's time, and the devotees had heard from and learned from Srila Prabhupada to offer the best possible offering to Lord Krishna. So to Lord Krishna, they were importing basmati rice from India and then offering to Krishna because they wanted to offer the best rice to Lord Krishna. And they were spending a lot of money in importing the rice because the local rice was not that good quality. It was broken, it had whatever, it didn't taste as good or whatever may be the reason. And so they were not having enough money for book distribution or for other things because a lot of money was being spent in importing the rice from India. And they were agonizing over that, what to do. Should we offer the local rice or should we continue importing it? Even in Krishna consciousness, they were having this dilemma, what to do and what will please Krishna more. And they were even debating whether we can offer a little bit basmati rice to Krishna. The devotees can eat the local rice, but how can devotees eat something that is not offered to Krishna? So whatever devotees eat must be offered to Krishna. So you're back to square one. How can the devotees consume local rice without offering that local rice to Krishna? And all these things were going on. So they wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. And fortunately, Srila Prabhupada was present on the planet. And this is the benefit of having a guru. That if you are in a dilemma, you can ask the guru and he will give the message according to their acharyas. They are our gurus. Now, every guru may not be an acharya, but the guru has a much deeper understanding of the acharyas and they can guide us in our life. And just in case if there's a problem with their interpretation, then it's their problem. We are still shielded from the consequences of, even if it's that decision has a problem or that instruction has a problem. So anyway, it's not to pass off the instruction or the responsibility to the guru. That's not the intent, but our faith in the guru, Krishna makes it happen in a way that even whatever instruction guru gives, Krishna gets bound by that. Krishna accepts it because even if we are imperfect, Krishna accepts the devotional service through the guru because it's going up the Guru Parampara. We have discussed this topic also many times. So Srila Prabhupada said, no problem, just offer the local rice. No need to import any rice from India. And vigorously preach Krishna consciousness, spread Krishna consciousness. That was his instruction, and the devotees became completely satisfied, completely pacified, and they went on with their mission of Krishna consciousness, spreading Krishna consciousness in the whole world. So there is a primary objective, there's a higher objective. If one is sincerely and fully involved in the process of Krishna consciousness, then these decisions, these dilemmas become much easier. Now, I work at Intel, and Andy Grove, you might all remember, was a very famous CEO of Intel. And he used to say, in every agonizing decision, easy decisions are fine, where you don't have a decision pretty much to make. It's very easy. But the agonizing decisions, can anybody tell me how many options the most agonizing decision may have at a very minimum? A decision is agonizing because it has how many options?
2.
2, right? Whether to do A or B. At a minimum, it has 2 options, correct? Andy Grove said, no, there are no, 2 is not the right answer. The right answer is 3. The right answer is 3. There are always 3 options in any agonizing decision. One is option A, one is option B, and the third option is to continue to agonize about option A or B, A or B, A or B, to stay in that dilemma. And that's an option many people consciously choose, to continuously agonize. So somehow you have to find a way to get out of the agonization so that the decision becomes completely easy. And in this particular case, there is an option like that. The option is not between to take the vaccine or to not take the vaccine, take the vaccine, not take the vaccine. That's not the thing. Then you will agonize. Then you are actually choosing option 3, which is to continue to be agonized about option A or B. My thinking is, or my offering, or my offer for consideration to you all is, become seriously, genuinely interested and practice Krishna consciousness genuinely. Dedicate your life, if not your whole life, a large part of your life, in spreading the message of Krishna. And then the fact that you need to take the vaccine to protect yourself or to protect others or whatever, so that you can continue Krishna consciousness, your spreading of Krishna consciousness, your genuine practice of Krishna consciousness will be forwarded, in my opinion, completely eliminates the agony. And that's what made me choose, let's go take the vaccine so that one can continue their service in Krishna consciousness. That becomes a much easier decision. So to completely change the parameters of the decision. So for those who are not in this domain of sincerely practicing Krishna consciousness, for them, it may be an agonizing decision based on all the material constraints. They may be in the mode of goodness. They may be thinking, I don't want to harm those other people or be unfair to the unprivileged people in other countries or this or that. There'll be a lot of agony between option A or B. But if one is clear that my goal is to propagate Krishna consciousness, to spread the message of Krishna, and I need these things to be done so that I can remain healthy, fit, and forward the mission of Lord Chaitanya, of Srila Prabhupada, then the decision becomes much easier. So the request, or the bottom line, is to take up such a lifestyle, to take up such a mission, such a goal in life, and then the decision becomes so much easier. And again, taking up that serious Krishna consciousness should not be for the purpose of making the decision easier. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying anyway, take up that. And Srila Prabhupada promises that all decisions of life will become very simple and very easy. I want to conclude by showing you two things. So basically, that is the point of the discussion today, is to become seriously Krishna conscious, become very serious agents of or ambassadors of Srila Prabhupada, of Lord Chaitanya, to spread the message of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And many of these dilemmatic or very difficult decisions in life will become very easy. I just want to leave you with two different, with this thought for you to read. Here are two articles, and I thought I will go through it in detail. I'm even marked out, highlighted some points. Can you see my sharing, I believe? So this is an article by His Grace Vaisesika Prabhuji. He is one of my, mentors in the sense, he doesn't know me. I just, follow him very closely. In that sense, I have made him my mentor, sort of in a impersonal sort of way. I follow his classes, his lectures, his writings. He's just such a wonderful devotee. I have tremendous respect for him. Hopefully someday I will get to speak with him and touch his feet. But anyway, so this was an article written by him on why he decided to get the vaccine. And very nice, wonderful points he has made. This is on ISKCON.org. Where's the URL? Here you can see ISKCONnews.org. If you Google for Vaisesika Prabhuji's article, you will find it. And he has made some excellent points, very similar to the ones that I made. And I took most of my points, or large number of my points, from his writings. This was one of the influential writings for me personally. So please read this and you will get additional points, additional arguments. Another article, very similar lines, by His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj. You can see here, he's even posted a picture of him taking the vaccine. And very wonderful points he has made, again, on the similar lines. But the underlying theme in both these was that vaccine to take or not is not a big decision. The big decision is how seriously I can participate in Lord Chaitanya's and Srila Prabhupada's movement, and whatever needs to be done to forward, to trailblaze on that mission, I will do it. And if it needs taking the vaccine, fine, so be it. Whether it may have some plus points, some minus points, material level, this level, spiritual level, blah, blah, blah. The higher purpose is to forward Srila Prabhupada's mission. I'll just read the last line of Vaisesika Prabhuji's article, and very, very inspiring line this is. It says, when I was 16 years old, I chose to follow Srila Prabhupada. So he joined the movement when he was 16. And he says, now I'm 64 and I still rise early each morning to follow Srila Prabhupada's example throughout the day. In getting vaccinated, my intention was to simply follow what Srila Prabhupada did as he pushed the Sankirtan movement in the mood of his spiritual master. So if your goal is to continue to keep pushing the Sankirtan movement, and if it means taking the vaccine for that purpose to enable you to do that, so be it. Very wonderfully he has put it, and I will end with that thought. So hopefully I have given you enough food for thought on whether to take the vaccine or not. Please listen to it. These are my personal views, not the views of official ISKCON body. And even Vaisesika Prabhu says that over here as well. In the very beginning, he says, this article does not necessarily express the position of ISKCON News. They are the personal opinion of the author. So in the same spirit, what I have said is also in the same spirit. Please make your own considerations. I respect all views. Thank you so much for listening and for considering and giving me this opportunity to share my views. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shintai Sachinanand Dev Bhagwan ki jai. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, if not, we will conclude here. Thank you so much. We will proceed with Aarti right now. Hare Krishna.